We have attempted to cover the Nashville Mayoral's race like the morning dew, and I feel like we've done a pretty good job of it. And it's coming to its culmination. Tomorrow evening, the final votes will be cast, and the counting begins. And mayoral candidate Alice Rolli joins us in studio to talk about the candidacy and to, I imagine, make one final push to implore people to go out tomorrow and vote. Hello, Alice.
Hey, Matt. I'm glad to be back, and I'm glad you had a good vacation.
I did. Absent the the mild, health related issues, but it's all good. It's like a bad flu.
You look good. I know everybody can't see you here with your radio face on, but it looks good.
Thank you. I know you don't mean that, but that's okay. You brought a special guest, by the way, in the studio, and I loved her on stage. Yes. I thought she brought a breath of fresh air on stage. Tell everybody who's in studio with us.
Well, in studio with us is Stephanie Johnson, who was one of the 12 mayoral candidates, and she joined our team after August 4th when we built a little bit of a bigger team, and we are so glad that Stephanie is on our team.
Well, she's a wonderful addition, and I thought she was a wonderful voice of some, there's a lot of career politicians.
There are.
And Stephanie is, I don't want to date you, Stephanie. I don't want to pretend to understand how old you are, and I'm not asking. I wouldn't do that, but you are more youthful than many that were on the stage, and you presented that in such a way that I thought was fabulous, and congratulations. And I hope that your experience has not shied you away from trying to run for other things. I bet Alice feels the same way.
I do. I think it was a real gift. So after that first debate on Channel 2, I called Icy, who's the lady that raised me, and she sees everything like a lot of people in their 80s do on TV. And I said, Icy, how do you think I did? And she said, you did okay. Well, who else did you think was good? She said, well, I liked the man in the yellow tie. That was Jeff Yarborough. And he said, and then she said, I really liked the young miss. That's what she called Stephanie, because, she couldn't remember everybody's names, right. And that's okay. And she said, but I don't know if she's quite ready yet. And I said, well, I see, maybe we could work together and she could be with us. And it felt like it was sent up to heaven in that moment at the very beginning. And I feel like a prayer was answered when Stephanie joined our team.
As a self-described conservative, that this has always been an uphill push. You're like, Atlas holding that boulder on your shoulders, and any shrug and it'll fall off. But how has it been, and how hopeful are you that you can see this to a successful conclusion?
Well, I am hopeful. I'm, cautiously optimistic, right? I'm not, I learned how to count here at, Hume Fogg High School. So I'm okay on the math. The math is not always in the favor of us, but here's where the city is now. 8 years ago, most Nashville voters thought we were going in the right direction, and now most think we're going in the wrong direction. And I think they're starting to feel that if no one is ever going to challenge the permanent political class here, if no one is ever going to advance the idea that we actually can expect more of ourselves and of our city than we are right now. And I think our candidacy has made a lot of people have never gotten involved before that don't see themselves as an R or a D. We had an event in East Nashville last week, and the host, also a Metro Public Schools graduate like me, he said, look, it makes me uncomfortable that your opponent is endorsed by all 9 members of the school board, right? Like, who is actually going to bring any accountability if the work is just appeasing everyone all the time? And so I do think people sort of see me as an, honest broker. No one's ever going to be 100% happy with where I am, but we're going to actually make decisions and not study everything to death.
Well, what are one or two of the biggest points of separation between you and Freddie in terms of focus?
Yeah, so one would be around public safety. He has very specifically on his website and other places said that the safest cities don't have the strongest police forces. He has voted against some.
Wait, say that again?
Yep, it says it. The safest cities don't have the largest or the strongest police forces. They have, unicorns and butterflies and all these other things.
Right.
But I think what we feel is that if you call 911 today, the call time is much longer. We know we don't have we don't have enough police here. So we've got to get a mayor prepared to recruit the best urban police force in America, right? To say we want you to come and serve here, not we don't want you here. We want to be proud of our police, not trying to undermine them.
I've noticed a pattern, and I brought this up to Freddie O'Connell when he was on our show, that he he says he's for certain things, and then when it comes time for voting, he always seems to vote a different way.
Yep, he voted against license plate readers. Yeah.
But he says that he's in favor of giving the police the tools that they need, despite the fact that Police Chief Drake
asked for that,
begged for it.
Yep. Yeah. And it's a force multiplier, right? If we have empty positions, we know that, right? It's hard to recruit people. We know that. And so something like a technology like license plate readers, that's a proven force multiplier. We can apprehend more stolen guns, more stolen vehicles, and have more prosecutable evidence so that our DA can't say, oh, can't prosecute it, don't have the evidence.
You know, the last time you were on, I got accused of not bringing up one of the bigger issues in the city of Nashville, and so I want to bring it up from, kind of at the beginning. And we didn't talk about traffic.
Oh, I know.
And I don't know. You know, traffic to me is more kind of like the weather. Everybody complains about it, and nobody does anything about it.
Yeah.
What, if anything, can the mayor of Nashville, Tennessee do about the traffic situations that exist? Traffic seems to be fine in Nashville until it's not. And when it's not, it's really not. And, you know, I mean, obviously the potholes and whatnot. I mean, what is the role of the mayor when it comes to traffic?
Yeah, well, two things. First, the General Assembly just appropriated about $2.5 billion, but we'll get in this region $750 million. So first, it's getting busy saying, how are we being accountable to those dollars? How are we making sure that we are holding ourselves accountable to people who live here to say how many feet are we, adding, or how many potholes are we filling by day, and performance managing that. And then it's also, I think, broadly, this everything that people in Nashville say constantly is the state is taking everything away. But the state gave us the ability in 2017 to levy our own dedicated transit funding, and we're one of only 25 of the largest cities in the country. We're the only one that doesn't have that. So that means Davidson County taxpayers are at a disadvantage. So I don't see the job of the mayor as being the smartest engineer in the room. There is a plan. It's called Moving Forward Nashville. All of the regional county mayors have agreed to it. The most important thing for this next mayor to do is to be able to quarterback that dedicated funding stream so that we can start to leverage some of those federal funds. And you know, we are behind at least 10 years from an infrastructure perspective because we failed twice. We failed twice as a city with the AMP, and then we failed again with the 2018 transit referendum when we took this go it alone, we're better than everybody else approach. It doesn't work.
When your opponent was on with us, and I'm going to paraphrase him, I don't have his exact quote here, but when I asked him about his refusal to commit to not raising property taxes in Nashville, Tennessee, after what for many was a disastrous 34% property tax increase during the pandemic. After the current mayor, Cooper, promised that he wouldn't do so, he did so. And Freddie wouldn't commit to not, and said that, and this is the paraphrase, that you are naive in your pledge not that you will not raise taxes, because that demonstrates that somehow you don't understand how this works, and you don't understand what might come down the road, what might necessitate that sort of thing. What's your response to that?
Well, I think he hadn't spent enough time with Alice Rolli yet. I did not make that decision naively. Actually spent quite a bit of time and made that pledge on April 18th. So well before, Americans for Tax Reform even took notice of my race. I had already come to that position. So 34% is not the full story. If you go back 8 years ago to today and take the per capita property tax collections of this city, it has gone up 70%. Why? Because the valuation, the amount of taxable property is continuing to rise. We are literally adding the city of Chattanooga's tax base every 3 years, right? So part of this is closing some of these back doors. We had to do this in the Haslam administration too, where some entities are not being taxed. So we've got to be consistent in who we are taxing, and taxing everyone who's here. And then secondly, there is this mindset of, I cannot run the city within a nearly, when you do the math, that's a nearly 10% increase in property tax spending a year, collections a year, right? That we can't
because of the influx of people.
Yeah, and the increase in the property values overall, and the more developable property that is now being taxed. Like, think of people can drive around and go, "Gosh, that used to be a field, and now there's 50 homes there, right? So we are collecting significantly more property tax dollars. And then secondly, it is I actually believe, unlike my opponent, that the tourism economy is important to our city, right? That we need to fill the new stadium with good, events and concerts and keep those cash registers going. And that from that perspective, we can continue to fund a lot of our city services.
And how about this? Believing in the free market and believing that a robust free market and a lot of different concert venues competing against one another is a good thing as well, because you're going to rise the level of experience that the tourists have. You're going to bring more tourists in as a result. That's more tourism dollars that lessens the tax burdens of the citizens. And to that, I remind folks, and I know this about you, Alice, but for those who don't, on the renovation of the fairgrounds.
Yeah, we're for it. Yeah.
Do you
it's going to be another good venue too.
Do you believe if somehow you do not become the next mayor of Nashville, do you believe that we will see that renovation project happen?
Probably not. Yeah, probably not. Because it is hard to, you have to be uniquely brave to go up against John Ingram.
See, look.
I'm just being honest. I went to go see him, and I went to go talk to him about it.
This is what I like about you.
I went and met with him. I went and met with him, and I told him. Is he not the biggest
impediment to the renovation project at the fairgrounds? Just based on his influence and the amount of money that he has within that community.
I think he feels. I think he feels somewhat mistreated. That he didn't.
Did you sit down with him?
I did. Yeah.
What did he say?
Well, I think he feels like he shouldn't have next door to him another 30,000 seat venue. And
wasn't a venue there when he came there?
Yes, it was. Yeah, and they signed on that they were okay with it. I think some of his concern is he feels like they've received a larger subsidy than he did, which is probably a fair point. But I also look at it and I think he does have considerable influence in the city and the state. And so why don't we come up with a third way? If part of the issue is 30,000 seats is the challenge, right? Which that's a large stadium. The reason for that is because under state law, you have to have 30,000 seats to do a specific revenue bond for the entity, right? So what if instead we can go to the state and say, hey guys, you guys were going to come in for 17 million for this. Down in Jackson, you came in for $42 million for a water park. Why don't you bring us $42 million, get $17 million from the CVC? Well, then I'm 60 in, and maybe I don't have to bond it out at the same level, and it could have a slightly smaller stadium, but still have racing at the fairground. So I actually sort of believe that that everybody hiding in their corners and being mad and sort of fighting it out with their various PACs is not useful. That there's probably a third way.